In a world where constant communication often equates to success, we are taught to speak up, voice our opinions, and be heard. However, what if true influence isn't found in how much we speak, but in how carefully we choose our words? What if the ability to say less could actually be the key to making a greater impact in both our personal and professional lives? This book challenges the common belief that more words lead to more influence, offering a transformative perspective on communication. It's not about speaking less for the sake of silence, but about speaking with purpose, precision, and intentionality. The goal is to help you refine your ability to communicate effectively, ensuring that each word you say carries weight and contributes meaningfully to the conversation. As you move through the chapters ahead, you'll uncover practical strategies for mastering the art of speaking with impact. You'll learn how to control the urge to fill silence, how to choose your words strategically, and how to make a stronger impression in meetings, conversations, and emails. The insights shared here will empower you to express yourself more confidently, allowing you to communicate with clarity and influence, without the need for excessive explanation or unnecessary elaboration. By the end of this journey, you'll understand that the true power of communication lies not in quantity, but in quality. When you master the art of speaking less, you'll find that the respect, attention, and influence you desire are not only attainable, they're within your grasp. This is a new approach to communication, one that focuses on what really matters and teaches you how to make every word count. Chapter 1. Why talking too much is weakness, not strength. Talking too much can often feel like the right thing to do. It gives the illusion of control, intelligence, and confidence. But the truth is, excessive talking usually has the opposite effect. It can make you appear insecure, dilute the power of your words, and cause people to tune you out. Many of the most respected and influential individuals are those who speak with purpose, knowing that the fewer words they use, the more impact they have. Imagine being in a room where one person dominates the conversation, constantly sharing their thoughts without giving others a chance to speak. Over time, their words lose value, and people start disengaging. On the other hand, when someone speaks rarely but with precision, people listen intently. Their words hold weight because they are not thrown around carelessly. The most effective communicators understand that power lies not in the quantity of words, but in their quality and delivery. Silence can be uncomfortable, but it is also one of the most powerful tools in communication. When used intentionally, it allows space for thought and encourages others to contribute. Many people fear silence and try to fill it with unnecessary words, thinking it will keep the conversation going. In reality, pausing before speaking makes you appear more confident and gives your words greater meaning. It shows that you are thoughtful, measured, and deliberate in your approach. There is an old saying that knowledge speaks, but wisdom listens. People who are truly knowledgeable do not feel the need to prove themselves by constantly talking. Instead, they listen, absorb information, and only speak when they have something valuable to add. This makes their words more impactful and increases their credibility. Those who talk excessively often reveal too much, sometimes to their own disadvantage. They give away their thoughts, emotions, and strategies without realizing how much information they are exposing. Resisting the urge to talk too much requires self-discipline and awareness. One of the most effective ways to do this is by practicing active listening. When engaged in a conversation, focus on understanding what the other person is saying rather than thinking about what you will say next. This not only makes you a better communicator, but also earns you respect from others. People appreciate those who genuinely listen and respond thoughtfully, rather than those who simply wait for their turn to speak. Another important aspect of speaking with impact is knowing when to stop. If you find yourself over-explaining or repeating points, take a step back. Effective communication is not about proving how much you know, but about delivering your message clearly and concisely. When you keep your words precise and to the point, you leave a lasting impression rather than overwhelming people with excessive details. Many successful leaders and influential figures are known for their ability to speak less and say more. They understand that by choosing their words carefully, they maintain control over their message and their presence. When you speak too much, you give away your power. When you speak with intention, you command attention and respect. The key to mastering this skill is to develop a strong sense of self-awareness and to recognize the moments when silence can be more powerful than speech. Confidence is often mistaken for talking a lot, but in reality, true confidence is knowing that your words carry weight. You do not need to dominate a conversation to make an impact. Instead, you need to ensure that when you do speak, people listen. This comes from a place of self-assurance, knowing that your voice matters and that silence can be just as influential as words. By embracing the power of saying less, you not only enhance your communication skills, but also cultivate a presence that others respect and admire. The challenge lies in breaking old habits and retraining yourself to be comfortable with strategic silence. It is a skill that takes time to develop, but offers immense benefits in personal and professional interactions. The more you practice speaking with purpose, the more natural it becomes. Soon you will notice how people start paying more attention when you speak, how your words become more memorable, and how your influence grows. The ability to say less and mean more is one of the most powerful tools you can develop, and it is within your reach. Chapter 2. Speak less, earn more respect. In every interaction, there's an invisible exchange taking place. It's not just about the words you speak, it's about how those words shape the way others see you. Too often, people think that the more they talk, the more respect they will earn. They believe that if they can speak confidently, offer more ideas, and always have something to say, others will see them as powerful or important. But in reality, it's the opposite. Talking too much can actually diminish the respect others have for you, while speaking less can increase it. In every conversation, your presence and the way you communicate speak volumes, even more than the words you choose. People are naturally drawn to those who have the discipline to hold back and speak only when it truly matters. This doesn't mean remaining silent all the time. It means recognizing the value of every word and understanding that true strength lies not in the ability to talk, but in the ability to listen, observe, and speak with purpose. It's easy to be the one who fills the silence, who is always ready with an answer or an opinion. But in doing so, we may miss an opportunity to be perceived as thoughtful, calm, and deliberate. The more you speak, the more you expose yourself, sometimes in ways that don't reflect your true intentions or capabilities. On the other hand, when you speak less and choose your words carefully, you show that you are in control, that you have mastered the art of communication, and in turn, that you are someone who deserves respect. Think about the people you admire most. Chances are, they aren't the ones who dominate every conversation with their own voice. They are the ones who listen intently, who wait for the right moment to speak, and when they do speak, their words carry weight. There's a depth to their presence. They don't need to say much, because their words are always chosen with intention. This is the mark of someone who commands respect. Respect isn't earned by how loud you speak, or how frequently you contribute. It's earned by how much you value the space around you, by how much you make others feel seen and heard, and by how you make your words count. When you give others the chance to express themselves, you're showing that you value their opinions. When you speak less, you create room for those around you to rise. People appreciate being listened to, and in turn, they respect those who know how to listen. Imagine walking into a room full of people where one person is constantly talking, jumping from topic to topic, unable to stop themselves from filling every moment with their own voice. Now picture someone else in that room, someone who speaks only when they have something important to add, who carefully considers their words before speaking, and who doesn't feel the need to fill every silence. Which person do you gravitate toward? Which one do you trust more? The answer is clear. The person who speaks less is the one who stands out, who commands attention, and who earns respect. This isn't just a theory, it's something that can be seen in action every day. People who speak less and listen more are often the ones who lead with influence, who make decisions that carry weight, and whose opinions others value. Their words are seen as more precious because they aren't wasted. They don't speak just for the sake of speaking. When they do speak, it's with clarity and purpose, and this gives their words a kind of gravitas that others can't ignore. The person who talks too much, on the other hand, risks diluting their own message. When words are abundant, they lose their impact. Think about the last time someone spoke for an extended period without saying anything of real substance. You likely tuned out, didn't you? The more they talked, the less you listened. This happens because people inherently understand that words have value. When someone speaks too often, their words begin to lose that value. People start to assume that they're just filling the space, not contributing anything meaningful. This doesn't mean that silence is always the best option. There's a time to speak and a time to listen, and knowing the difference is key. The most respected individuals are the ones who know when to speak up and when to remain quiet. They don't feel the need to share their thoughts just because they have them. They understand that their silence often speaks louder than their words ever could. If you want to earn respect, start by speaking less. It's not about withholding your thoughts. It's about choosing the right moments to express them. When you speak, make it count. Think about the message you want to convey and ensure that it adds value to the conversation. This doesn't mean being overly calculated or guarded. It simply means having the awareness to recognize when your words will have the most impact. When you speak with this kind of intention, people will take you more seriously, and your words will resonate far more deeply than if you were to simply add to the noise. Take note of the people around you who are most respected. Observe how they communicate. They don't feel the need to dominate conversations, and they certainly don't engage in endless small talk. Instead, they know how to make their point with precision and confidence. They choose their words carefully, and as a result, people listen when they speak. Their words have power because they aren't thrown around carelessly. They have purpose. To build this kind of presence, practice pausing before you speak. Let the silence sit for a moment before you fill it with words. In doing so, you create space for your thoughts to settle and for the conversation to develop. This pause also signals to others that you are someone who thinks before speaking, someone who doesn't rush to fill the air with empty words. It's a simple habit that has a profound effect on the way people perceive you. When you pause, people start to listen more intently, waiting for the carefully considered words you're about to say. The next time you're in a conversation, challenge yourself to speak less. See how others respond when you don't immediately jump in with your opinion or try to steer the conversation in your direction. Observe how they engage with you. Chances are they'll start to value your input more because you've given them the space to speak and be heard. You're no longer just adding noise to the conversation, you're contributing something meaningful. By speaking less and listening more, you start to transform the way you communicate. You stop trying to prove your worth with every word, and instead start letting your presence, your silence, and your thoughtful contributions earn the respect of those around you. People won't remember the many things you said, but they'll remember the few moments when your words truly mattered. And in the end, that's what makes all the difference. Chapter 3. The magic of pausing before you speak. There's something profoundly powerful in a moment of silence. We often rush to fill every gap in conversation with words, thinking that silence feels awkward or uncomfortable. But silence, when used correctly, is not only comfortable, it's effective. In fact, pausing before speaking can completely transform the way you communicate, the way others perceive you, and the impact of your message. Every conversation has a rhythm, and when you learn how to pause, you allow that rhythm to settle. A pause is not a sign of hesitation or weakness, it's a deliberate act of control, a conscious decision to wait and gather your thoughts before responding. It's in those quiet moments that clarity emerges, allowing you to speak with purpose, rather than rushing to fill the air with unnecessary noise. Think about any time you've been in a conversation with someone who pauses before responding. It doesn't matter if they're answering a question or making a statement. That pause creates an air of anticipation. You start to wonder what they're going to say next, because they've given you the impression that their words are valuable. They aren't just speaking to speak, they are speaking to make an impact. When you learn the magic of pausing before you speak, you stop being a reactive participant in conversations. Instead, you become an active creator. You don't just respond to what's being said, you take a moment to consider how your words will fit into the conversation. This pause allows you to approach communication from a place of control, clarity, and intentionality. You're no longer reacting to the conversation, you're shaping it with every word you speak. The world around us is filled with noise. Conversations happen in an instant, and people are always talking, always sharing opinions, and always looking for ways to make their voices heard. In such an environment, it's easy to fall into the habit of speaking too quickly, of rushing to say something before someone else does. But this rush doesn't benefit anyone. It only causes confusion, miscommunication, and the loss of the power that silence brings. When you pause, you create the space necessary to process the conversation fully. You aren't simply reacting to the words being thrown at you, you're taking in all the information, considering the emotional tone, and thinking about the best possible response. This kind of thoughtful communication shows others that you're in control of your thoughts and your emotions. People respect those who can think before they speak, because it shows maturity and self-awareness. It shows that they are not easily swept away by the speed of conversation, but that they carefully consider their contribution before making it. Pausing before you speak can also lead to more meaningful conversations. By taking a step back and waiting, you allow the conversation to unfold in its own time. Sometimes, the pause is all it takes for someone else to continue, offering insights they might have otherwise held back. This simple act of waiting can deepen a conversation, allowing ideas to emerge that might have been missed in the rush to respond. This principle applies in everyday situations, whether you're speaking with a friend, discussing something important with a colleague, or engaging in a heated debate. In each case, taking a moment to pause can change the dynamic of the exchange. You'll find that your words have more weight, and that people are more likely to listen to you when they sense that you're not just filling the air with idle chatter. They will begin to respect the quiet moments in your conversations, knowing that it's in those moments that you gather your thoughts and craft a response that truly matters. The pause also has an emotional effect. When you take a beat before speaking, it sends a message that you are not easily swayed by emotions or the pressure to respond. Whether it's a stressful situation or a casual chat, This pause allows you to choose your response thoughtfully rather than reacting impulsively. It's the difference between speaking out of frustration and speaking from a place of calm, measured confidence. In tense moments, the pause is a game changer. Have you ever been in a disagreement where emotions were running high? It's easy to get swept up in the heat of the moment and say things you don't mean. But if you take a second to pause and breathe before responding, you regain control of the situation. You might not have all the answers, but that moment of silence allows you to gather your thoughts, understand your feelings, and articulate your point of view without the heat of the moment clouding your judgment. This doesn't just help you stay calm, it helps you communicate more effectively and with greater emotional intelligence. Sometimes we think that speaking immediately will help us appear more knowledgeable, more confident, or more engaged in the conversation. But the truth is that speaking too quickly often comes across as rushed or unfocused. It can be tempting to jump into a conversation, especially when you feel like you have something important to say. But the best communicators know that the most powerful statements often come after a brief moment of reflection. Pausing is a sign of confidence. It shows that you don't need to rush. You aren't anxious to share your thoughts just to fill the silence. You trust that your words will come when they are ready, and that when you speak, they will be heard. The longer you practice pausing before you speak, the more comfortable you will become with the silence. You'll learn that silence isn't awkward. It's powerful. It gives you the time you need to choose your words carefully and speak from a place of clarity. The power of the pause also extends to how you communicate non-verbally. A pause isn't just about waiting to speak. It's also about the space you give others. In every conversation, people are often waiting for their turn to speak. When you take the time to pause, you offer them the opportunity to share their thoughts, which in turn makes them feel valued. This simple act of waiting allows the conversation to flow more naturally, creating a back and forth that feels less forced and more organic. People who speak too quickly often find themselves interrupting others or dominating the conversation. This can make them come across as overbearing or dismissive of others' opinions. But by embracing the pause, you create a space for others to contribute and make the conversation feel more balanced. It allows for more meaningful exchanges, where everyone's voice is heard and the conversation becomes a true dialogue rather than a monologue. In addition to creating more meaningful exchanges, pausing before you speak also gives you the opportunity to listen. When you take that moment to stop and think, you're better able to absorb what the other person is saying. This is a critical skill in any conversation, as it allows you to respond thoughtfully, based on a full understanding of the situation. By practicing the pause, you develop better listening skills, and in turn, your communication becomes more empathetic and more effective. The next time you find yourself in a conversation, try embracing the pause. Notice how it changes the way you interact with others. You might feel a little uncomfortable at first, but as you practice, you'll begin to see how powerful this simple tool can be. It will help you speak with more intention, listen more attentively, and build stronger connections with those around you. You'll learn that sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is nothing at all. Just wait, reflect, and then speak when you are ready. Chapter 4. How to stop talking just to fill the silence. There's something almost instinctive about the urge to fill every silence in a conversation. We've all been there. A pause starts to form, and before it becomes noticeable, we jump in to speak. We fear that silence makes us seem awkward, unprepared, or disconnected. The problem is that filling every gap with words doesn't enhance communication. It often weakens it. The desire to keep talking, to make sure the silence is eradicated, may actually be one of the biggest communication pitfalls. Stopping this automatic response to fill the silence can be incredibly transformative, not just for your conversations, but for the way you present yourself. Silence, in many ways, is a sign of strength. It shows that you are comfortable in your own thoughts and that you don't feel the need to constantly prove yourself. It indicates a level of confidence, patience, and self-control that others will recognize and respect. Think about a time when you were in a conversation and you were speaking to someone who seemed to be constantly adding unnecessary commentary, filling every moment with words. It may have felt a bit overwhelming, even exhausting. The reason for this is simple. When someone is talking just to fill the silence, they aren't engaging with you, they're just filling space. Their words don't have any real weight or purpose, and eventually you might stop listening altogether. Now contrast that with someone who is comfortable with silence. They're not afraid of letting the conversation breathe, letting the moment settle. When they do speak, it feels more meaningful, because it's clear that their words aren't just tossed out into the conversation, they are carefully chosen. There's a quiet confidence in their ability to let a moment pass without speaking, and that confidence makes their words land with much more impact. You might think that if you aren't constantly talking, you'll be seen as disengaged or uninterested. In fact, the opposite is true. When you resist the urge to speak just to fill the space, it shows that you are present and mindful of the flow of the conversation. It shows that you're fully absorbing what the other person is saying, and when it's your turn to speak, you have something meaningful to offer. This is the mark of a thoughtful communicator, someone who understands that words are powerful and that they should not be thrown around recklessly. The next time you're in a conversation, try to notice when you feel the urge to speak, simply to avoid the discomfort of silence. It might happen in small moments, when someone finishes speaking, when there's a lull, or when you're thinking about what to say next. Most people, when faced with these moments, feel compelled to say something just to keep things moving. But resisting that impulse is where the magic happens. It's in those moments of silence that you have the chance to collect your thoughts and think about what you really want to contribute. Filling the silence with unnecessary words is often a way of seeking validation or approval. We talk because we want to be seen, heard, and understood. But over time, this need to constantly talk can work against us. When we fill every gap with our voice, we unintentionally push others away from truly listening. Instead of creating space for connection, we might end up creating distance. Think about how different it feels when someone gives you the floor to speak. They pause and listen, genuinely interested in what you have to say. Their silence becomes an invitation for you to share. It's a powerful experience because it makes you feel valued. That's what the silence can do for you when you choose to embrace it. It invites people into the conversation. It makes others feel that their words are just as important as yours, and this sense of mutual respect is key to building stronger, more meaningful relationships. When you stop talking just to fill the silence, you also open yourself up to the possibility of truly hearing what others have to say. Many times, the best ideas and insights come not from what you say, but from what you allow others to express. The longer you wait before speaking, the more likely you are to hear something valuable that might have gone unnoticed if you'd been talking over the other person. This kind of active listening allows you to connect with people in a deeper way, making your conversations not just about exchanging words, but about truly understanding one another. It's important to remember that silence is not the same as disengagement. There's a big difference between being quiet because you're lost in your thoughts and being quiet because you're simply not interested. When you embrace silence in conversations, it signals to others that you are fully present, You're not trying to rush the exchange or force your thoughts into the conversation. Instead, you're listening, reflecting, and offering a response that is thoughtful and relevant. Sometimes, the silence is what gives the conversation its power. It's the space between your words that makes what you say next more meaningful. When you speak after allowing the silence to stretch for a moment, your words carry more weight. People will be listening more intently, not only because you've created the space for them to focus, but also because they recognize that you aren't speaking just for the sake of speaking. There's a wisdom that comes with silence. When you're comfortable with silence, you show that you are in control of your thoughts and your reactions. You don't feel the need to rush, to cover every moment with words, or to express every passing thought. You become more deliberate, more measured in how you communicate. This kind of self-control is something that others will notice, respect, and begin to admire. The next time you're in a situation where you might normally feel the urge to fill the silence, try to pause instead. Allow yourself a moment to think, to breathe, and to really listen. Resist the temptation to speak just for the sake of it. In doing so, you'll not only become a more effective communicator, but you'll also begin to notice how much more you can learn from others. You'll also find that the quality of your contributions to the conversation will improve because they will come from a place of thoughtfulness, reflection, and genuine connection. Silence isn't a void, it's a space of potential. It's a tool that, when used correctly, enhances communication and deepens relationships. When you allow silence to be a part of your interactions, you create a new kind of communication, one that is thoughtful, respectful, and rooted in understanding. People will begin to value your words more because they know that when you speak, it's not just noise, it's something worth listening to. Chapter 5. Think before you speak. You've probably had moments when you spoke without really thinking first, moments where your words just spilled out. Maybe it was in a heated conversation, a nervous moment, or just one of those times when you felt compelled to say something, even though you weren't sure if it was necessary. In those instances, your words might have lost their impact, or worse, caused a misunderstanding. The truth is, speaking without thinking can lead to consequences you didn't intend, whether it's damaging a relationship, creating confusion, or simply missing the mark. When you stop and take a moment to think before you speak, you do more than just avoid saying something inappropriate or poorly timed. You open up the possibility for deeper, more intentional conversations. The idea of thinking before speaking isn't just about filtering yourself. It's about ensuring that what you say aligns with your true thoughts and intentions, that your words are deliberate and meaningful. Most people are reactive by nature. They respond to things quickly, without processing all the nuances of what's being said, and they often miss the bigger picture. This reactionary mode is often driven by emotions or the pressure to be heard. But if you've ever been in a situation where you've said something and immediately wished you could take it back, you've seen the downside of that fast-paced reaction. When we respond impulsively, we often don't allow ourselves the time to choose our words carefully, and we may end up saying something that we don't mean, or worse, saying something that causes harm. Thinking before speaking doesn't just help you avoid mistakes. It actually improves the quality of your communication. When you take a moment to pause, you open yourself up to more thoughtful responses. You give yourself a chance to consider the situation fully, to absorb what the other person is saying, and then choose a response that is purposeful and meaningful. This kind of thoughtful communication has a much greater impact because it is grounded in self-awareness and clarity. By taking the time to think before speaking, you also gain control over the conversation. Conversations can easily spiral into misunderstandings or arguments when people speak impulsively or emotionally. However, When you remain calm, take a breath, and process the situation before responding, you avoid getting caught up in the heat of the moment. You create space for a more measured response, one that shows you are fully present and in control of your emotions. This is powerful because it demonstrates emotional intelligence and maturity. When you think before speaking, you're also protecting yourself from saying something you might regret later. How many times have you heard someone say, "I didn't mean to say that," or "I didn't think it through"? These are common phrases because people often speak without first considering the consequences of their words. When we're impulsive, we don't stop to ask ourselves whether what we're saying is helpful, necessary, or even accurate. But if we train ourselves to take a moment before speaking, we can avoid these knee-jerk reactions and instead engage in conversations that are more productive, respectful, and true to our intentions. A simple pause before speaking also gives you the opportunity to consider the feelings of others. Every word we speak has the potential to affect someone, whether we realize it or not. If you take the time to think about what you're about to say, you're more likely to speak in a way that is considerate and empathetic. Instead of just spitting out whatever comes to mind, you can ask yourself, will this be helpful? How will this make the other person feel? Am I being honest, or am I saying this just to be heard? These questions allow you to communicate with a level of mindfulness that strengthens your relationships and builds trust. This habit of thinking before speaking also helps you avoid misunderstandings. When you rush to respond, you may miss critical details in the conversation, leading to responses that don't address the real issue. By taking time to process what's been said, you ensure that your words are relevant and on point. The more you practice this, the more naturally it will come to you. You'll find yourself giving more thoughtful responses that show you are actively listening and engaged in the conversation. Being a good communicator isn't just about having the right words to say. It's also about knowing when to speak and when to listen. Taking a moment to think before you respond is as much about being a good listener as it is about choosing the right words. It allows you to absorb the full context of the conversation, to understand the emotions behind the words, and to make sure your response is aligned with what's truly important. This way, your words come from a place of understanding, not assumption or quick judgment. In a world where speed is often valued over thoughtfulness, taking time to reflect before speaking might seem like a luxury. But the truth is, this pause isn't a waste of time. It's an investment in your communication. It's an investment in deeper connections, in creating conversations that are not just about exchanging words, but about understanding one another at a deeper level. The more you practice thinking before speaking, the more you'll notice that your words carry more weight. Your conversations are more fulfilling, and your relationships are strengthened. Thinking before speaking also means recognizing that silence is an important part of the conversation. It's not about filling every second with words. It's about creating space for your thoughts to settle, for the other person to speak, and for a more balanced dialogue to emerge. Many of the most effective communicators are those who speak less but say more. They understand the power of silence, the importance of timing, and the value of thoughtful, well-crafted responses. In practice, thinking before speaking doesn't have to be a long, drawn-out process. It's not about overthinking everything you say, but about giving yourself a moment to assess the situation and decide how best to engage. If you're in a conversation and something unexpected comes up, rather than immediately reacting, take a brief pause. Use that moment to assess the context, understand the emotions involved, and decide how your response can add value. This slight delay in speaking can be the difference between a productive exchange and a conflict. The more you practice this habit of thinking before speaking, the more natural it will feel. Over time, it will become second nature to pause and reflect before offering your thoughts. You'll begin to notice that your words have more impact because they come from a place of clarity and intention. You'll find yourself engaging in deeper, more meaningful conversations that leave both you and the other person feeling understood and respected. Mastering the art of thinking before speaking isn't just a way to improve your communication skills, it's a way to improve your relationships, your self-awareness, and your ability to navigate the complexities of life. It's a skill that will serve you in every situation, whether it's a casual chat with a friend, a work-related discussion, or a challenging conversation with a loved one. When you learn to pause, think, and then speak, you become a more effective communicator, a more thoughtful person, and a better listener. And in turn, you create conversations that matter. Conversations that build understanding, create connection, and foster trust. And all of that starts with a simple pause before you speak. Chapter 6. Cut the fluff, get to the point faster. There's something truly freeing about getting to the point quickly in a conversation, especially when it's done in a way that feels natural and deliberate. Too often, we fall into the trap of adding unnecessary details, throwing in extra words that don't really add value. It's like clutter, words that don't need to be there, but we feel compelled to use them anyway. The truth is, the more we can cut through the noise and get straight to the point, the more we can engage people, respect their time, and make a lasting impression. The ability to get to the point quickly isn't just about being concise, it's about being effective. It's about communicating in a way that respects your listener, that shows you value their time and attention. Think about the conversations that stick with you, the ones where someone has an idea or a point to make, and they don't hesitate. They deliver it clearly and confidently, without the excess. These conversations are memorable because they feel sharp, direct, and purposeful. On the other hand, consider how it feels when someone starts speaking and continues on and on, circling around the main point. It can be frustrating, right? You start losing interest, your attention drifts, and eventually it becomes a chore to stay engaged. It's easy to get lost in the weeds, and before you know it, you've tuned out, missing the main message entirely. This is what happens when you add too much fluff to your conversations. It's not only ineffective, but it also risks losing the listener's attention and the impact of your message. Getting to the point doesn't mean rushing through everything or leaving out important details. It means stripping away the unnecessary, focusing on what truly matters, and delivering it in a clear and confident way. It's about understanding that the essence of what you have to say doesn't require all the extra filler. Your message, your idea, or your point is powerful enough on its own, and when you remove the distractions, it stands out more. The key to being clear and concise in your conversations is understanding the purpose behind your words. Before you speak, ask yourself, what am I trying to convey? What do I want the other person to understand or do as a result of what I'm saying? If you can't answer that question right away, take a moment to think it through. When you know what you want to communicate, it becomes much easier to eliminate anything that isn't directly related to that core message. Think about a time when you've been in a meeting, a class, or even just a casual conversation, and someone goes on for what feels like forever without ever getting to the heart of the matter. It can be draining. The person may have valuable insights, but by the time they reach their point, most of the audience has checked out. What would have made a difference if they'd stripped away the excess, the repetitive sentences, and the irrelevant side stories? They could have delivered their message clearly and quickly. It's a sign of respect for the audience to get to the point without dragging things out unnecessarily. This principle applies not only to spoken conversations, but to written communication as well. In emails, texts, and even social media posts, it's easy to fall into the trap of rambling. We might over-explain, try to cover every angle, or simply provide more information than is needed. Yet, just like in spoken conversations, brevity is often more impactful. When you're concise, you're not only making it easier for the other person to understand you, but you're also showing them that you respect their time. The goal isn't to say everything you could possibly say, it's to say what needs to be said in the most effective way possible. Think about how much more productive your interactions would be if you removed the excess. Whether you're talking to a colleague, a friend, or a family member, when you focus on the key points, it creates space for clarity and understanding. It also makes you seem more confident. People trust those who can express themselves succinctly, who can cut through the fluff and communicate directly. It shows that you value your own time and theirs. Being clear and concise also helps prevent misunderstandings. When you over-explain or give too many details, you run the risk of confusing the listener. They might become overwhelmed by the sheer amount of information and miss the important bits. The more straightforward you are, the less room there is for misinterpretation. The point you're trying to make becomes sharper, easier to understand, and ultimately more impactful. Of course, there are times when context and explanation are necessary. Some conversations require depth, details, and nuance. But even then, it's possible to get to the point first and then provide any necessary details afterward. For example, if you're explaining something complicated, start by giving a brief overview of the main idea. Then, if needed, dive into the specifics. This way, you've already established the core message, and your listener knows where you're headed. Another effective way to get to the point is to use examples or analogies that clarify your message without overloading it with extraneous information. Instead of over-explaining, you can provide a simple illustration that brings your point to life. A well-chosen example can speak volumes more than a long-winded explanation ever could. It makes your message memorable, relatable, and easier to understand. It's important to remember that getting to the point isn't about being blunt or dismissive. It's not about cutting off someone else's thoughts or rushing them along. It's about creating space for clear, intentional communication. It's about finding the balance between being succinct and being thorough. The goal is not to remove all the nuance or subtleties from a conversation, but to avoid unnecessary complexity that doesn't serve the main purpose of what you're trying to communicate. One way to practice getting to the point is to observe the moments when you feel yourself beginning to ramble. Notice when your thoughts start to wander, and when you begin adding unnecessary details that don't contribute to the conversation. Instead of simply following that instinct to fill the silence or explain more than is needed, pause and refocus on your core message. Ask yourself, what's the one thing I want this person to walk away with? And then direct your words toward that. The more you practice getting to the point, the more natural it will feel. You'll begin to notice that your conversations are more efficient, your messages are clearer, and you're able to hold the attention of your audience better. You'll be able to express yourself with more confidence, and others will appreciate the directness and clarity you bring to the table. It's not about stripping away the richness of conversation or dumbing things down. It's about respecting the value of your time and your listeners' time. It's about recognizing that sometimes less is more. When you get to the point, your words carry weight. They matter more because they're focused, deliberate, and purposeful. And when you focus on what's truly important, you create space for more meaningful and productive conversations. Chapter 7. Use powerful words. Every word must count. There's a subtle power in choosing the right words, words that are measured, deliberate and meaningful. It's easy to think that the more we say, the more impactful our words will be, but the opposite is often true. The words you use, and more importantly, the words you choose not to use, have a profound effect on how you are perceived and how your message lands. Powerful language is not just about what you say, it's about how you say. When you use powerful words, you don't just convey a message, you create an impact. You make people listen. But powerful words don't come from random choices or from trying to impress others. They come from a place of clarity, intention and respect. Powerful words are purposeful. They are the ones that cut through the noise and get to the heart of what you're trying to communicate. They're the words that inspire, motivate, and persuade. Take a moment and think about the times when someone's words truly resonated with you. It might have been a leader, a mentor, or even a friend. What made their words stand out? Often it wasn't just the content but the way they were said, the confidence behind them, the clarity and the conviction in every syllable. That's the power of using words that matter. When you speak with intention, when you choose your words carefully, people listen differently. They're drawn to the power of what you're saying, not just the words themselves. The first step in using powerful words is understanding that not all words are created equal. Some words are weak, fluffy, vague or uncertain. These words don't carry weight, and they don't help your message land with impact. Words like maybe, possibly, or I think can undermine the power of your statement because they signal hesitation or uncertainty. These words leave room for doubt. They don't express confidence, and they don't inspire trust. On the other hand, words like I will, I know, and I believe convey certainty and conviction. They make it clear that you're not just speaking off the cuff. You've thought about what you're saying, and you're willing to stand behind it. When you speak with certainty, people take you seriously. They trust that you're not just filling the air with empty words. They trust that you know what you're talking about, and that your words are worth listening to. But powerful words aren't just about exuding confidence, they're also about precision. Every word you say should serve a specific purpose. It should add value to the conversation. This means you need to be intentional with your language. Instead of using general, imprecise terms, get specific. Instead of saying, we need to improve the process, say we need to streamline the process to eliminate delays and increase efficiency. The more precise you are with your language, the more powerful your message becomes. Powerful words also have the ability to evoke emotion. Think about the difference between a simple statement and one that stirs something inside you. Words like change, freedom, hope, and courage have the ability to inspire action because they tap into something deeper, our values, our desires, our beliefs. When you choose words that resonate emotionally, you create a connection with your audience. You don't just convey information, you stir something in them, you inspire them to act, to think differently, or to feel empowered. This emotional connection is particularly important when you want to persuade or influence others. The best communicators don't just present facts or ideas, they speak to the heart. They use words that paint a picture, words that create vivid imagery and spark imagination. They speak in a way that makes their audience feel something, and that emotional reaction drives action. But it's not just about choosing powerful words in the moment. It's about building a vocabulary that consistently reflects strength, purpose, and clarity. The more you consciously choose words that are intentional, precise, and emotionally resonant, the more natural it will become to communicate with power. Over time, you'll find that your language transforms. You'll naturally begin to speak with more authority and confidence because you've been training yourself to choose your words carefully. Another key to using powerful words is being mindful of their tone and delivery. The best words, when spoken without conviction, lose their impact. You could have the most powerful sentence in the world, but if you deliver it with hesitation or uncertainty, it won't land. It's not just about the words themselves, but about how you say them. When you speak with a steady, confident tone, when your words come from a place of belief, you make an impact. Your audience feels your certainty, and that draws them in. The power of words also comes from knowing when to use them and when to hold back. Sometimes, less is more. Powerful words don't need to be used in every sentence. In fact, the more you speak, the less weight each word carries. Think about the people who have mastered the art of using powerful words. They don't speak often, but when they do, their words have a weight that commands attention. This isn't just a matter of being concise, it's about being deliberate. When you know that what you say matters, you don't waste your words. You don't speak just to fill silence. You speak when you have something valuable to contribute, and when you do, people listen. A powerful word, when used at the right moment, has the potential to change the course of a conversation or even a relationship. It's like planting a seed. It has the power to grow, to take root, and to inspire change. But to make that seed grow, you have to choose your words carefully and speak them with confidence. When you do, you create something lasting. Your words become a tool for influence, for connection, and for growth. One of the best ways to start using more powerful words is to pay attention to the language you use in your daily life. Listen to the words you speak and notice when they're weak or hesitant. Notice when you fall into the trap of using filler words or vague language. And then make a conscious effort to replace them with words that reflect confidence, clarity, and purpose. It's a simple shift, but over time, it will make a big difference in how you communicate and how others perceive you. You don't have to wait for big, dramatic moments to use powerful words. Every conversation is an opportunity to practice choosing the right words, to communicate with intention, and to make an impact. Whether you're giving a presentation, having a casual chat with a friend, or sending an email, you have the power to choose words that will resonate. And the more you practice, the more natural it will feel. The next time you speak, remember that words are not just words, they're tools. They have the power to influence, to inspire, and to create change. So choose them wisely, speak with purpose, speak with confidence, and watch how your words begin to transform the way you communicate and the way people respond to you. When you speak with intention, the impact of your words is limitless. Chapter 8. How to stop explaining yourself too much. Sometimes, it feels like there's this unwritten rule that we need to explain ourselves constantly, especially when we feel unsure or want to be understood. The urge to clarify, justify, or provide further reasoning behind every little action or statement can be overwhelming. But what if I told you that constantly explaining yourself is often not only unnecessary, but also counterproductive? More often than not, the need to explain every decision or opinion can actually dilute your message, making you seem uncertain or insecure, even if that's not the case at all. Think about how you respond when someone else spends an inordinate amount of time trying to explain themselves. There's a point when you stop listening, because you've already understood what they meant. You might even start feeling a bit uncomfortable, like they're overcompensating, and your trust in their own clarity starts to fade. That constant need to explain, while often rooted in the desire to ensure understanding, can have the opposite effect. It's a simple fact that when you over-explain, you leave space for doubt, not only in the minds of others but in your own. One of the most effective ways to avoid unnecessary explanations is to develop the confidence to let your words stand on their own. This doesn't mean you should avoid explaining yourself altogether, but rather that you should recognize when explanations are redundant or even self-defeating. When you're clear on your stance, your ideas, or your decisions, you don't need to pad them with excessive justification. Sometimes, brevity and directness speak louder than pages of explanation. Part of this comes down to understanding why we feel the need to explain ourselves. More often than not, it stems from a fear of judgment or rejection. When we offer too much explanation, it's because we want to cover every possible angle, hoping to preempt any misunderstandings or criticisms. We want to make sure we've accounted for every possibility, leaving nothing to chance. But here's the reality. People aren't always looking for that level of detail. They trust that you've made your decision for a reason, and the more you explain, the more it might seem like you're second-guessing yourself. Consider a situation where you've made a decision, say at work or in your personal life. Instead of simply stating your position, you feel the need to justify it with a long list of reasons. You start explaining all the thought processes that led you there, all the considerations you took into account, and all the potential consequences you've already thought through. But at some point, you might notice that the other person is just nodding politely, and the more you talk, the more they start to tune out. This is a clear sign that you've over-explained, and the impact of your decision starts to fade because it's buried under too many details. This is especially common in professional environments where people might feel like they need to over-explain their actions to gain approval or avoid criticism. The reality is, over-explaining often makes you look less confident, even if your intentions are the opposite. People respect those who can make a decision and stand by it without feeling the need to justify it endlessly. It shows that you trust your judgment and believe in the choices you make. When you stop over-explaining, you also stop leaving room for unnecessary debate. Often when we feel the need to justify ourselves, it opens up space for others to challenge our decisions. They see your uncertainty and feel encouraged to offer their opinions or corrections. When you're clear and concise, you remove that opportunity for anyone to undermine your position. You're not asking for validation or approval, you're simply stating what you believe to be true, and that's powerful. To break the habit of over-explaining, you first need to become aware of when you're doing it. Pay attention to the moments when you feel that instinct to keep justifying yourself. Notice how you react when someone challenges you or questions your ideas. Do you feel the need to give a long list of reasons to back up what you've said? If so, pause for a moment. Recognize that you don't have to fill the silence with explanation. If you've already made your point, let it stand on its own. It also helps to remind yourself that the people you're talking to trust that you have valid reasons for your decisions, even if they don't fully understand them right away. Your confidence in your choices will often speak louder than any explanation ever could. The more you resist the urge to over-explain, the more people will respect your ability to make decisions and stand by them. Your words will have more impact because they won't be buried under layers of unnecessary justification. Another key element in avoiding over-explanation is learning how to embrace silence. Often we feel the need to explain ourselves because we fear the awkwardness that silence brings. We want to fill the space with more words, more details, more justifications to ensure the conversation doesn't stall. But silence can be powerful. It allows the other person to think and process what you've said. It allows them to respond more thoughtfully, instead of just reacting to the constant stream of words. The more you embrace the silence, the less pressure you'll feel to fill it, and the more room there will be for meaningful exchange. Additionally, over-explaining can sometimes stem from a desire to be understood or liked. We may think that the more we explain ourselves, the better people will understand us. But here's the truth: when you explain too much, you're actually giving up some of your own power. You're making your words less impactful because they've been watered down. Instead of explaining yourself to be understood, allow your actions and your decisions to speak for you. When you make choices with confidence and clarity, people will understand you, not because you've justified every move you've made, but because they respect the certainty with which you carry yourself. A huge part of overcoming the need to over-explain is recognizing that not everyone needs to know your reasoning. It's okay to keep some of your thought process to yourself. You don't owe everyone an explanation for every decision you make. If you're confident in your choices, you don't need to lay out the entire thought process behind them. Sometimes, a simple statement of your position is enough. If someone needs more information, they'll ask for it. And if they don't, it's a sign that they trust you to know what you're doing. The beauty of this is that once you stop over-explaining, you free up mental and emotional space. You stop putting so much energy into defending yourself and start putting that energy into creating, acting, and moving forward. The more you practice this, the more your confidence will grow and the less you'll feel the need to justify your choices. This is a key part of developing a more powerful way of communicating, one where your words carry weight because they're intentional, clear, and unburdened by unnecessary justification. So the next time you feel the urge to explain yourself, take a deep breath and remind yourself that you don't need to justify your decisions or actions. Stand tall in your choices and allow your words to speak for themselves. It's a small shift, but it can completely change the way you communicate and the way people see you. Instead of over-explaining, practice simply saying what you mean with confidence. The more you do this, the more your words will resonate with those around you. Chapter 9. How to make people listen when you speak. When it comes to speaking with impact, it's not just about what you say, it's about how you say it, and often when you say it. The real challenge is getting people to listen, and that's not as simple as just having the loudest voice or the most words. People don't listen because you talk, they listen because you make them want to. There's a level of influence you can achieve when you learn how to capture attention, hold it, and ensure that your message sticks. This is where the art of making people listen comes into play. First and foremost, it's important to recognize that listening is an active choice. People don't automatically listen to everyone who speaks. They're selective. They listen to those who offer value, clarity, and purpose. If your words don't stand out or grab attention, then they'll quickly drift away. That's why speaking with impact isn't just about being heard, it's about making your words count. It's about making sure that the moment you speak, others can't help but listen. One of the most effective ways to make people listen is to show respect for their time and attention. People's attention is a valuable commodity, and when they give it to you, it's important not to waste it. One way to respect someone's attention is by being clear and concise. When you speak, make your words count. Don't just talk to fill the silence. When your words are intentional and to the point, they naturally carry more weight. It shows that you value the person you're speaking to and their time. When you don't waste their time with unnecessary fluff, they will appreciate your communication style and be more inclined to listen. Another powerful technique to get people to listen is to establish a sense of curiosity. People are naturally curious creatures. They like to know what's next, what's different, or what's new. When you speak, Make sure you're offering something that piques their curiosity. It could be a compelling story, an interesting fact, or a fresh perspective on something they've heard before. When you add an element of intrigue, it hooks your listener. They want to hear what's coming next. This doesn't mean you need to be overly dramatic or constantly try to amaze people with new ideas, but rather that you have to speak in a way that makes others want to hear more. Another key to making people listen is to speak with emotion and authenticity. There's something magnetic about people who speak from the heart. When you speak with passion, with genuine emotion behind your words, people can feel it. They connect with the sincerity of your message. It's easy to tune out someone who is speaking in a monotone, without energy or emotion. But when you're engaged in what you're saying, when you truly believe in the message you're conveying, others can't help but tune in. Passionate speech is contagious. It gets under people's skin, makes them feel something, and that feeling is what keeps them listening. Part of being authentic in your speech is not trying to be someone you're not. People can sense inauthenticity a mile away, and when you try too hard to sound like someone else, or adopt a style that doesn't align with who you are, it comes across as forced. It doesn't matter how well you deliver it or how polished it sounds, people will pick up on it and tune out. The key to making people listen is to show up as your true self. Speak from a place of genuine belief and confidence, and you'll find that people respond to you more deeply. It's also crucial to be present when you speak. Too often, we speak without really engaging in the moment. Our minds wander, and we're thinking about what to say next, instead of truly connecting with the person we're talking to. The more present you are, the more you draw people in. When you give someone your full attention, when they feel that you're genuinely listening to them and valuing their presence, they'll return that respect. The same goes for when it's your turn to speak. If you want others to listen, give them the same focus and respect that you expect in return. When you're fully engaged, it shows, and people are more likely to pay attention to what you have to say. Another important aspect of getting people to listen is to avoid being overly defensive. It's easy to get caught up in defending our opinions, especially if we feel challenged. But when you're constantly in defense mode, it becomes exhausting, and people tend to tune you out. People listen to those who are composed, calm, and confident in their positions. Instead of reacting defensively, learn to stay grounded and explain your point of view with clarity and confidence. When you're not constantly on the defensive, you allow space for real dialogue, and that makes others more likely to listen. Body language plays a huge role in how people perceive and respond to your words. You can say all the right things, but if your body language doesn't align with your message, it's easy for people to lose focus. When you speak, your posture, facial expressions and gestures should be open and inviting. People are more likely to listen when you seem approachable, confident and genuine. When your body language supports your words, you create a more cohesive and compelling message. In addition to your body language, the way you manage the rhythm and pacing of your speech can help keep people engaged. People are more likely to listen when you speak at a pace that allows them to absorb your message without feeling rushed or overwhelmed. Avoid speaking too fast or too slowly. Instead, find a rhythm that allows your audience to take in your words while keeping them on the edge of their seats. Pausing at the right moments, especially after important points, gives people the space to process what you've said and builds anticipation for what comes next. Silence, when used effectively, can be just as powerful as words. It's also helpful to remember that you don't have to say everything all at once. You don't need to fill every moment with words. If you have a compelling message to deliver, let it unfold naturally. People are more likely to listen when they don't feel overwhelmed with information. Take your time, let your message breathe. When you're not trying to say everything at once, you create space for people to digest your words and engage more fully in the conversation. One of the most powerful ways to make people listen is to show them the value of what you're saying. People are more likely to pay attention if they can see how your words benefit them. Whether you're giving advice, offering a solution, or sharing an idea, make it clear why your message matters. Show the value up front, and people will naturally be drawn to listen. When you focus on what's in it for them, you make it easier for people to invest their time and energy in listening. When you speak with purpose, passion, and clarity, people can't help but listen. It's not about having the loudest voice or the longest speech. It's about knowing how to use your voice effectively, how to speak with intention, how to make others feel heard, and how to offer value through your words. If you can master the art of making people listen, you'll find that your influence grows, your relationships deepen, and your messages have more impact. It's not just about what you say, it's about how you make people feel and whether they are willing to listen. And once you've mastered that, your ability to communicate becomes one of the most powerful tools you have at your disposal. Chapter 10. Say more in fewer words. Speaking less but still having a significant impact is one of the most powerful skills you can develop. There's something striking about someone who knows how to communicate effectively without overwhelming others with words. In our fast-paced world, it often feels like the more we talk, the more we get noticed. But in reality, the key to making a lasting impression lies in how succinctly we can convey our message. By mastering the art of saying more with fewer words, you can grab attention, engage listeners, and leave a meaningful mark without the need to speak endlessly. The beauty of speaking less doesn't lie in silence itself, but in the power that comes with choosing your words carefully. We've all had experiences where we were trapped in a conversation that seemed to drag on and on. The more someone spoke, the less interested we became. It's a universal truth. People's attention is a limited resource. It's easy to lose it if you're not mindful of how much you're saying and the way in which you say it. When you speak with purpose, when every word has intent, people notice. They listen because they realize that what you say matters. It's important to understand that speaking less isn't about withholding information. It's about providing only what's necessary and relevant. You don't need to explain everything in exhaustive detail. Instead, focus on the essence of what you want to communicate. When you cut through the noise and get straight to the point, your message becomes clearer, and clarity is something people crave. When they can quickly grasp the core of what you're saying, it allows them to process it, reflect on it, and remember it. Your message stays with them longer, and that's where the impact lies. One way to ensure your words land is to embrace the power of simplicity. Simplicity doesn't mean dumbing things down, it means refining your thoughts to their most essential form. Imagine you're holding a conversation with a friend. You're not speaking to impress them or to fill the space with chatter. Instead, you're engaging with them on a level where both of you can be present and understand each other fully. That's the kind of communication that sticks. If you can take complex ideas and distill them into a few straightforward sentences, your words will have far greater impact than if you were to ramble on, over-explaining, or adding unnecessary qualifiers. It's about recognizing that less truly is more. When you strip away the excess, what remains is stronger. This applies not only to the content of what you say, but also to the way you say it. In a world filled with noise and distractions, brevity is a breath of fresh air. People are constantly bombarded with information from all sides. What they really need are messages that cut through that noise and offer them something valuable. A message that's succinct, relevant, and to the point has the ability to stand out in ways that long-winded explanations simply cannot. In many cases, people listen more closely when they know you aren't going to waste their time. Think about it. When someone speaks to you for an extended period, how often do you find yourself zoning out or losing interest? It's human nature to drift when the message is long-winded. But if someone is able to express their thoughts concisely, you're more likely to tune in and pay attention. The efficiency of their communication commands respect. By learning how to say more in fewer words, you become a speaker who grabs attention, holds it, and delivers the message that matters. At the heart of speaking less, but having greater impact, is an understanding of your audience. Consider who you're speaking to and what they need from the conversation. Are you speaking to inform, to persuade, or simply to connect? The way you tailor your words will have a huge effect on how they're received. For example, if you're trying to persuade someone, you don't need to bombard them with every possible piece of information. Instead, focus on the key points that will influence their decision. When you're speaking to inform, make sure you're providing the most relevant facts, not overwhelming them with tangents. And when your goal is connection, keep your words personal and to the point, avoiding unnecessary fillers. This approach can also be incredibly effective in professional settings. Whether you're leading a team, presenting an idea to a client, or speaking in a meeting, your ability to communicate clearly and succinctly will set you apart. People respect leaders who can communicate their thoughts with precision, without getting bogged down in unnecessary details. It shows confidence and authority. When you're able to present your ideas in a straightforward, easy-to-understand manner, you position yourself as someone who knows what they're talking about, and who values the time of others. This isn't just a skill for leaders, it's a skill for anyone who wants to make an impact in their personal and professional relationships. Furthermore, when you choose to say less, you also give yourself space to listen more. Often, the most powerful communicators are those who spend as much time listening as they do speaking. Listening actively allows you to understand others more deeply, which in turn enables you to respond more thoughtfully. By being present in the conversation, you'll be better equipped to offer relevant insights, ask meaningful questions, and contribute in ways that are truly impactful. This balance between speaking and listening creates a dynamic that fosters trust and respect, which strengthens your connections with others. Being mindful of your speech also means choosing your timing wisely. Sometimes, the best way to make an impact is not to say anything at all. There's power in silence. Pausing for a moment before you speak allows your words to have weight. It gives people time to absorb what you've said before moving on to the next point. Pausing can also serve as a signal that you have something important to say, which can draw people in and make them listen more closely. Timing your words in such a way that you're not speaking over someone else or interrupting the flow of a conversation can make your message feel more intentional and more appreciated. The same principle applies in written communication. Whether it's a text message, an email, or a social media post, the power of brevity cannot be overstated. In today's world, where people are inundated with messages from every direction, a concise, well-crafted message stands out. You don't need to over-explain or over-elaborate. Be clear, be direct, and leave room for the other person to engage. When you give them the space to think, to respond, and to contribute, you're creating a more effective dialogue. Saying less doesn't mean saying nothing. It means being intentional with every word you choose. It's about recognizing that each word has value and should be used purposefully. When you speak less but say more, you show that you respect your audience, your time, and your message. You prove that you understand the power of language, and you know how to wield it with precision. As you practice this skill, you'll find that your communication becomes stronger, more impactful, and more effective in all aspects of your life. The beauty of speaking less is that it gives you the power to leave a lasting impression, one that is thoughtful, meaningful, and most importantly heard. Chapter 11. The power of not replying immediately. There's something powerful about knowing when to stay quiet. In a world where constant connectivity makes it almost impossible to go a few minutes without some form of response, it's easy to feel pressured to reply instantly, to react right away. But there's immense value in choosing not to speak immediately. When we pause before responding, we create space for clarity, thoughtfulness, and a deeper connection with the conversation at hand. In many situations, responding right away can lead to rushed answers or reactions driven by emotion rather than wisdom. How often do we wish we had taken a moment to consider our words carefully before saying something we regret? The instinct to answer immediately often comes from the desire to appear knowledgeable or to avoid an uncomfortable silence, but in truth, that desire can undermine our ability to communicate effectively. The power of taking a moment to pause gives us the opportunity to calm our minds and think through our response before committing to it. It's a way to ensure that our words are well thought out, intentional, and in line with the message we wish to convey. This pause doesn't need to be long or awkward, but it's a powerful act of discipline. It's about training yourself to resist the knee-jerk urge to fill every silence. By not jumping in the moment someone finishes speaking, you show that you are actively listening, not just waiting for your turn to talk. You also give yourself the chance to respond from a place of clarity, not impulse. Silence allows you to process what was said, to gauge the tone of the conversation, and to choose your words with care. It prevents misunderstandings and helps you avoid unnecessary conflict. The habit of not replying immediately isn't just about holding back your words, it's about cultivating an awareness of the dynamics of a conversation. When you don't rush to speak, you give others the space to express themselves fully. Sometimes, people don't need an immediate answer, they need to be heard. By allowing a moment of silence to linger, you invite deeper reflection, both in yourself and in the person you're engaging with. This pause creates a space where more meaningful communication can take place, as it allows everyone involved to process and contribute thoughtfully. In difficult or emotionally charged conversations, the value of silence cannot be overstated. When emotions run high, it's easy for things to spiral out of control. Our minds race, and we feel the impulse to defend ourselves or react to what has been said. But responding immediately often exacerbates the situation. By taking a pause, you give yourself the chance to cool down, to put your emotions in check, and to approach the conversation with a clear mind. This moment of silence is not weakness. It's strength. It's an act of self-control, of maturity, and of emotional intelligence. Silence also gives the other person the opportunity to reflect. How often have we been caught in a conversation where we were rushing to get our point across, only to realize that we had missed an important detail or failed to consider the other person's perspective? When we don't reply right away, we allow the conversation to breathe, creating a space for greater understanding to emerge. Sometimes, a pause gives the other person the time they need to reconsider their own words, to realize something they hadn't initially thought through, or to provide you with a deeper explanation that enriches the conversation. This idea of the powerful pause extends beyond direct conversation. In meetings, whether at work or in personal settings, the same principle applies. When a question or comment is directed at you, rather than immediately blurting out a response, take a moment to collect your thoughts. This simple act communicates a sense of confidence and control. It shows that you are not rushed and that you're not speaking just for the sake of filling the space. Instead, you are pausing to consider how best to contribute to the discussion, ensuring your input is meaningful and relevant. Silence can also serve as a powerful negotiation tool. If you're in a situation where you need to make a decision or negotiate terms, not replying immediately can shift the dynamic in your favor. When you take a moment to pause, you show that you are weighing the options, not just agreeing to whatever is presented. This can encourage the other party to reconsider their position, offer more favorable terms, or provide additional information that helps you make a more informed decision. In the world of negotiation, silence is often the strongest statement you can make. Of course, there's a balance to be struck. Silence for the sake of silence can lead to disengagement, making it harder to foster connections or to maintain the flow of a conversation. It's important to recognize when a pause has served its purpose and when it's time to speak up. A well-timed response after a thoughtful pause has much more weight and impact than a hasty one. The key is to remain conscious of the rhythm of the conversation, to sense when your contribution is needed, and to have the discipline to wait for the right moment to speak. This principle also holds true in written communication. In today's digital age, where we're often expected to reply to emails, texts, and messages instantly, the pressure to respond quickly is ever present. But just like in face-to-face communication, taking a moment to pause before replying can lead to better outcomes. Whether it's a tricky email at work or a message from a friend, giving yourself the space to think before responding allows you to compose a more thoughtful, measured reply. It shows that you value the conversation and that you're not just reacting in haste. The same principle applies to social media. How many times have you seen a comment or post that if you'd responded immediately would have been reactive or overly emotional? By waiting and reflecting before hitting send, you avoid the regret of speaking in the heat of the moment. Taking time to pause also gives us the opportunity to manage our emotions. It's easy to get caught up in the intensity of a moment, but our ability to control our reactions speaks volumes about our maturity. Pausing helps us step back from a situation and approach it with a calm, composed demeanor. It's about recognizing that we don't have to respond right away to every stimulus. In fact, sometimes saying nothing is the most powerful form of communication. By choosing to pause, we regain control over our responses and create the space for a more measured, intentional contribution. So the next time you find yourself in a conversation or situation where you feel the urge to respond immediately, remember the power of the pause. It's a sign of strength, self-control, and wisdom. It allows you to process, reflect, and respond in a way that is intentional and impactful. Whether in a personal conversation, a professional meeting, or a written exchange, taking the time to pause before replying will always work in your favor. It's not about silence for the sake of silence, but about ensuring that when you do speak, your words have substance and power behind them. Chapter 12. Master the art of saying no with confidence. There's a certain power in the word no. For many, it's a word that doesn't come easily. We've all been there, feeling the weight of saying no to someone, worrying about disappointing them, or fearing that our refusal will damage the relationship. We might find ourselves saying yes to things we don't want to do, or that we don't have time for, just to avoid the discomfort of saying no. But the truth is, learning to say no is one of the most important skills you can develop, not only for your own well-being, but for the respect you deserve from others. Saying no isn't about being rude or rejecting others. It's about setting boundaries, respecting your own needs, and understanding your priorities. It's a form of self-care, discipline, and emotional intelligence. When you say no, you're creating space for what truly matters in your life. You're saying yes to yourself, to your goals, to your time, and to your energy. It allows you to focus on what's important, rather than constantly giving in to the demands and expectations of others. For many people, the fear of saying no stems from a place of insecurity. We worry that others will think we're selfish, rude, or unhelpful. The truth is, though, saying no doesn't make you a bad person. In fact, it can make you a stronger, more respected individual. People who can set clear boundaries are often seen as more confident, more reliable, and more focused. It's not a rejection of the other person or their needs, but rather an affirmation of your own needs and limits. Saying no also creates space for more authentic, meaningful relationships. When you're constantly saying yes to things you don't want to do, you're spreading yourself thin and likely not giving your best to any one thing. By saying no, you're protecting your energy and resources, ensuring that when you do engage with others, you're doing so with full presence and genuine interest. This leads to stronger, more respectful connections because you're not overcommitting or being stretched too thin. It's easy to slip into the habit of saying yes without really considering if it's the right thing for you. The pressure to please others or to avoid conflict can lead us to agree to things we don't truly want or need to do. But every time we say yes when we should say no, we're saying no to ourselves. We're denying ourselves the opportunity to focus on what matters, to rest, or to engage in activities that truly align with our values. Learning to say no is a way of protecting our time and energy, ensuring that we're not giving away pieces of ourselves to things that don't serve us. The key to saying no with confidence is understanding that it's a choice, not a burden. It's about recognizing that you have control over how you spend your time and what you agree to. When you say no, you're making an intentional decision to honor your priorities and your well-being. It's not about being confrontational or dismissive. It's about asserting your boundaries in a healthy, respectful way. You can say no without explanation or guilt, and that's something that takes practice. The more you do it, the easier it becomes. A simple way to approach saying no is to recognize that it doesn't require a lengthy explanation. Often, when we're afraid to say no, we feel the need to justify our decision, to offer excuses or elaborate on why we can't comply. But the truth is, you don't owe anyone a lengthy explanation for your decisions. A simple "I can't" or "I'm unable to" is enough. You don't need to apologize for putting your needs first. Remember, it's not about being selfish, it's about being clear and honest with your time and energy. It's also helpful to recognize that saying no doesn't mean you're rejecting the person. You can say no to a request without rejecting the person who made it. You can remain supportive and respectful while still asserting your boundaries. If someone asks you to take on a responsibility or attend an event that you don't have the capacity for, a polite, firm no is enough. You can still express appreciation for the invitation or request, but you don't have to agree to everything that's asked of you. The fear of missing out can be another barrier to saying no. We worry that by turning down an invitation or opportunity, we might miss something important or exciting. But the truth is, saying no to one thing often opens up the space for something much more aligned with your true goals and values. When you say no, you make room for things that are truly meaningful. You allow yourself the freedom to focus on what's important to you, without the distractions or obligations that can pull you away from your priorities. There's also a tendency to feel that saying no is a sign of weakness, but it's the opposite. It takes strength and courage to establish boundaries and stand firm in your decisions. Saying no is not a sign that you lack compassion or care for others. It's a sign that you care enough about yourself to protect your time and energy. People will respect you more when you can confidently say no. It shows that you have self-respect and that you're not willing to overextend yourself just to please others. As you practice saying no, you may notice that others begin to respect your boundaries more as well. Setting clear limits sends the message that you value yourself, and that makes others more likely to value you too. Over time, you'll find that people start to understand and even expect that you won't always say yes. And that's okay. It's a healthy part of establishing respect in your relationships. You're not responsible for other people's reactions to your boundaries. What matters is that you're respecting yourself and taking care of your own needs. If you struggle with the guilt of saying no, it might help to reframe your perspective. Instead of viewing a no as something negative or confrontational, try to see it as an act of self-care. When you say no to something that isn't right for you, you're giving yourself the gift of space, clarity, and peace. You're creating the room to focus on what truly matters, to prioritize your own needs, and to make room for the opportunities that align with your true purpose. Remember that it's okay to say no. It's a powerful, necessary tool for protecting your time, your energy, and your well-being. Every time you say no, you're asserting your boundaries, reinforcing your self-respect, and choosing to live life on your own terms. And over time, the more you practice saying no, the easier it becomes to embrace your own needs and to set the kind of boundaries that support your healthiest, most fulfilled life. Chapter 13. The Smart Way to Speak Less in Texts and Emails. In today's world, communication has shifted in ways that were once hard to imagine. With the advent of texting, instant messaging, and emails, we find ourselves in a constant flow of written communication. At first glance, it seems like a more convenient way to stay connected, quick, efficient, and often less intrusive. But when you think about it, these texts and emails can often become overwhelming. They leave us feeling like we're always on and rarely have space to breathe. The idea of cutting back on words, being more direct and purposeful, can help regain control of this fast-paced communication landscape. A simple rule to remember is that less is more. If you've ever been in the position where you send a message and it gets lost in a sea of unnecessary details, you know the frustration. It happens all the time. We feel the need to explain everything in detail, to make sure the other person understands every nuance, every little context, thinking that the more we say, the clearer the message will be. But in truth, the opposite is often true. The more words you add, the more you risk diluting the message and overwhelming the recipient. One of the most effective ways to communicate clearly and efficiently is by getting straight to the point. Think of it as a filter. Before you type out that text or email, take a moment to assess whether every word serves a purpose. Is this information necessary for the recipient to understand what you're trying to convey? Does it add value, or does it just take up space? A lot of times, we fall into the habit of adding fluff because we're either trying to soften a message or we're not sure exactly what we want to say, so we end up saying too much. To start communicating with more precision, begin by asking yourself one simple question before sending any text or email. What's the core of this message? If you can't immediately articulate the core message, chances are it's not clear to you either. In that case, take a step back and refine it. Instead of trying to explain every little detail or every possible angle, focus on the most important point. This is especially helpful in professional settings where clarity is essential. People are busy. They don't have the time to read through long, rambling messages. They just want the essential information, and they want it fast. Being concise doesn't mean being abrupt or rude. It's about making sure that you're only including what's truly relevant and necessary. A good rule of thumb is to ask, if I were the person receiving this, what would be the one thing I absolutely needed to know? That's the essence of the message. Everything else can be cut out. If there's a bit of context that's needed, sure, include it. But don't overdo it. Don't feel like you need to explain everything in order for it to make sense. A few carefully chosen words can go much further than an overwhelming block of text. Think about the clarity you feel when you read a short and direct message. It immediately gives you a sense of control. You don't have to sift through unnecessary words to figure out what's being asked or shared. In contrast, long-winded messages can make us feel like we're drowning in a sea of unnecessary information. It's exhausting, and it can lead to misunderstandings. When you communicate more efficiently, you not only save time for yourself, but also for the person on the other end. There's another powerful aspect of reducing your words, the opportunity to increase your impact. The more concise and thoughtful you are, the more likely it is that your message will be remembered. When people see that you value their time and attention, they're more likely to respect your message. It becomes a tool for better engagement and stronger relationships. In professional environments, brevity is often seen as a sign of respect. It shows that you are confident enough to get to the point without unnecessary elaboration. It signals that you trust the other person's ability to understand your message without needing a lengthy explanation. When you adopt this approach, you'll notice that people respond more positively. They'll appreciate the clarity, and you'll be more likely to have productive conversations that lead to quick actions. In personal communication, the principle is the same. If you're texting a friend, spouse, or family member, they're likely to appreciate a more direct approach. There's no need to over-explain or add unnecessary details that may only complicate the conversation. In fact, excessive explanation can sometimes come across as passive-aggressive, as though you're overcompensating for something that's unclear. When you keep things simple, you avoid these pitfalls and open the door to more meaningful exchanges. Another important piece of effective communication is recognizing when it's time to stop talking. The temptation to keep explaining ourselves, to keep offering more information, can come from a place of insecurity. We think that by adding more details, we'll make ourselves clearer or more convincing. But often the more we talk, the less convincing we become. People will start to tune us out, and the real message can get lost. Learning how to stop at the right moment is a key aspect of communicating with impact. To get better at this, start paying attention to your conversations. Whether they're in person, over text, or in emails, notice the moments where you might be saying more than necessary. How often do you feel like you're over-explaining? How often do you add extra context or qualifiers that don't add value? Once you become aware of this, practice reining it in. Stop before you say too much. By doing this, you allow your message to breathe and land more effectively. Finally, one of the most powerful tools in concise communication is silence. The space between words can often say more than the words themselves. In a conversation, don't be afraid of silence. Give the other person time to process what you've said before continuing. In written communication, you can achieve this by being mindful of your pacing. Don't feel compelled to fill every gap with more words. A well-timed pause or break can give your message the space it needs to resonate. As you get more comfortable with this approach, you'll see how effective it can be in all aspects of your life. You'll find that your messages are clearer, your conversations more impactful, and your relationships stronger. You'll also begin to notice how much time and energy you save when you stop over-explaining, overthinking, and overcomplicating things. You can focus more on the things that matter and let go of the unnecessary clutter that often fills our communications. By speaking less in our texts and emails, we open up more space for meaningful conversations. We give ourselves the ability to be understood quickly, respected for our clarity, and able to make our points without getting lost in unnecessary words. In a world that is constantly moving and filled with distractions, mastering this art of brevity can help us stand out and be heard. Chapter 14. Stop oversharing. Start attracting. In a world driven by oversharing, it's easy to fall into the trap of revealing too much. We live in a time when social media encourages us to share every moment, every thought and every detail of our lives. It's almost as though we're taught that our value is determined by how much we expose, how many layers we peel back for others to see. But in reality, there's power in restraint. There's strength in knowing what to keep to yourself. Oversharing, especially in personal relationships, can often lead to unintended consequences. When we disclose too much, we risk putting others in positions where they feel uncomfortable or overwhelmed. People don't always need to know every detail of your life in order to connect with you. Sometimes, the most meaningful interactions happen when you leave a little bit of mystery. When we share too much, it can also dilute the importance of the things we do share. If you're constantly spilling everything out into the open, it becomes harder for people to discern what matters. Imagine receiving a text from a friend who tells you every minute detail of their day, from what they ate for lunch to how they felt about it. At first it might be interesting, but after a while you begin to lose track of what's truly important in their life. The details start to blend together, and the true meaning behind their words becomes clouded by the excess. Instead of creating stronger connections, oversharing can leave relationships feeling shallow and unfulfilling. It's not just about relationships with others. When you overshare, you also lose sight of yourself. We've all been there, telling someone everything, letting the words pour out, only to realize later that we've overexposed ourselves, leaving little room for personal reflection or for others to really see us for who we are. When you give away too much, too soon, you rob yourself of the chance to fully process your experiences before sharing them with others. You might feel an initial sense of relief or validation after revealing personal details, but that momentary satisfaction is fleeting. What you gain in attention or sympathy, you may lose in respect or understanding. We need to redefine what it means to be authentic. Authenticity isn't about sharing every detail of your life. It's about being true to yourself and allowing others to see the parts of you that matter. The power of keeping things to yourself comes from being discerning about when and what to share. It's about allowing the most meaningful moments to shine, without oversaturating the conversation with everything you've been thinking, feeling or experiencing. You also have to recognize that oversharing can sometimes be a defense mechanism. We often overcompensate with words when we feel insecure or afraid of being judged. If we let it all out, then we can control how people see us, or at least we think we can. But this is an illusion. The more you share, the less control you have over how people perceive you. Instead of feeling more secure, you may end up feeling exposed and vulnerable in ways you didn't expect. It's a fine line between being open and being too open. Being more selective with what you share doesn't mean you're being dishonest. On the contrary, it's a way of protecting the parts of you that are sacred and personal. Just because something is happening in your life doesn't mean it has to be shared in every conversation. Think of your life as a garden. Not every plant needs to be on display. There are seeds, there are buds, and there are moments that are meant to bloom in their own time. When you overshare, you rush the process, not giving your thoughts, feelings, or experiences the space they need to fully grow. In the age of constant connection, it's crucial to know when to step back. Social media has made it incredibly easy to overshare. The constant need to update, to post, to comment, it creates a pressure to put yourself out there in a way that can be overwhelming. But when you step back and choose not to share every moment, you take back control. You create space for reflection and allow others to see you in a more meaningful way. Sometimes, silence speaks louder than words. There's also something incredibly empowering about not oversharing. When you keep certain aspects of your life private, you set boundaries that command respect. It's a reminder to others that your life is not an open book for them to read at their leisure. You teach people how to treat you by setting limits on what they can and can't know. By holding back certain details, you invite others to earn your trust and give them the opportunity to engage with you on a deeper level. When you share only the essential, your words become more powerful because they are not diluted by unnecessary details. Consider how you interact with others. When people overshare with you, it can sometimes make you feel uncomfortable or even burdened by their openness. It's important to recognize that not everyone wants to hear every detail of your life. Sometimes, what feels like a casual conversation to you can feel like a lot to someone else. By keeping things more balanced, you can create space for a more equal exchange. Instead of unloading everything onto someone, you give them room to share too, and in turn, you create more meaningful connections. Not oversharing also allows you to maintain a sense of mystery. There's something intriguing about someone who keeps certain things to themselves. It draws people in, inviting them to get to know you on a deeper level. The idea of mystery isn't about playing games or pretending to be someone you're not. It's about choosing when and how to reveal parts of yourself and letting others discover you gradually. Over time, you'll find that people are more drawn to you because they respect your boundaries and appreciate the mystery that comes with not knowing everything all at once. This approach to communication also applies to professional settings. In the workplace, it's important to maintain a level of professionalism and discretion. Oversharing about personal struggles, emotional challenges, or unnecessary details about your life can blur the lines between personal and professional. While it's important to build rapport with colleagues, there's a fine line between being open and being overly familiar. Being selective about what you share in the workplace shows that you can maintain boundaries and professionalism. It also helps you avoid the potential for gossip or misunderstandings, which can arise when personal information is shared too freely. Over time, you'll begin to see the benefits of this practice in your personal and professional life. Your conversations will become more intentional, more meaningful, and less about seeking validation and more about forming true connections. The effort to stop oversharing may feel difficult at first, especially if you're used to expressing every thought, but it will soon feel natural. With time, you'll recognize that the less you reveal, the more you have to offer in terms of quality connections. In a world that often encourages us to share everything, it takes courage to hold back. But in doing so, you preserve your sense of self and create relationships that are built on respect, trust, and genuine connection. The art of saying less is not just about cutting down on the number of words you use. It's about knowing when to remain silent and choosing to keep certain parts of your life sacred. It's a powerful tool that can help you attract the right people, maintain your integrity, and find deeper fulfillment in the connections you choose to make. Chapter 15. How to speak less in meetings but sound smarter. In meetings, there's often an unspoken pressure to speak up, to say something, to fill the silence with your thoughts. It's a natural impulse. We all want to be heard and to contribute. But if we aren't careful, this drive to speak can end up doing more harm than good. Sometimes, it's not about how much you say, but how effectively you communicate. The art of speaking less in meetings is something many people overlook, yet it can set you apart in the most profound way. First, it's important to understand why speaking less can actually make you sound smarter. When we talk too much in a meeting, it's easy to come across as unsure or overcompensating. People might feel that you're trying to fill gaps or validate your presence. But when you speak less, when you say only what's necessary, it often comes across as more confident, more thoughtful, and more deliberate. It shows that you value the time and attention of others, that you know how to get to the point without rambling, and that you understand the importance of brevity. People often forget that meetings are not about performing for others, they're about collaboration, problem solving, and moving things forward. The more we talk, the more we risk derailing these objectives. We might find ourselves repeating ideas that have already been covered, elaborating unnecessarily on points that don't add value, or simply taking up space without contributing anything of substance. Each time we do this, we lose the focus of the group, and our credibility begins to slip away. Instead of filling the air with unnecessary words, take a step back and listen. The key to speaking less in meetings is first learning how to listen better. Often people talk over each other or speak without fully understanding the context. Listening allows you to pick up on nuances, to understand what's been said, and to form a more informed response. When you truly listen, you also give others the opportunity to contribute, which fosters a more balanced and productive discussion. When you do speak, make it count. Each word you say should carry weight. Focus on delivering your message clearly and concisely, avoiding tangents or filler words. Whether you're proposing an idea, offering feedback, or asking a question, try to keep your points short and precise. By doing this, you give others the space to engage with your ideas, leading to more meaningful and dynamic conversations. It's a sign of respect when you don't monopolize the conversation. It shows that you value the input of others and understand the importance of collaborative effort. Another key to speaking less in meetings is knowing when to hold back. Sometimes we feel the urge to respond immediately to everything that's said, to prove that we're paying attention, or to add our perspective to every point. But it's important to recognize that not everything requires a response. There's power in silence. By pausing before speaking, you give yourself a moment to reflect, to decide whether your contribution will truly add value, or if it's better to let others take the lead. This doesn't mean being passive or disengaged. It means being strategic about when and how you speak. As you practice speaking less, you'll start to notice a shift in how others perceive you. People will begin to respect you for your clarity, your thoughtfulness, and your ability to stay on point. They'll see that you're someone who understands the importance of making your words count, and that you're not just speaking for the sake of being heard. This can lead to greater influence within the group, as your contributions will be more likely to be valued and remembered. Of course, speaking less doesn't mean saying nothing. There will always be moments when your input is essential, when your expertise or perspective is needed to move the discussion forward. But those moments will stand out more if you've built a reputation for speaking thoughtfully and sparingly. People will be more inclined to listen to you when you speak, because they'll trust that what you say has substance, rather than just being another voice in the crowd. In some meetings, particularly those with a lot of people, it's easy to fall into the trap of trying to stand out or get noticed. But the more you talk in these situations, the more you risk blending in with the noise. It's far more effective to be strategic about when you speak. Make sure your words are aligned with the purpose of the meeting and contribute to its goals. When you speak only when it's necessary and relevant, people will begin to look to you for direction because they know that when you speak, it's with purpose. There's also something incredibly powerful about saying less in meetings because it forces you to refine your ideas before presenting them. The more you talk, the less you think about the quality of your words. But when you hold back, you're forced to focus on clarity and precision. You can't afford to waste time with unnecessary explanations or ramblings. This discipline can help you become a clearer, more persuasive communicator overall. You'll start to notice that your points land more effectively, and you're able to guide conversations with ease rather than simply participating. When you learn to speak less in meetings, you also learn to value others' contributions. The more you talk, the less room there is for others to share their ideas. But when you pull back, you create space for others to contribute. This fosters an environment of collaboration where people feel empowered to speak up and share their thoughts. It also leads to more dynamic discussions, as diverse perspectives are given the chance to be heard and considered. It's important to recognize that speaking less isn't about suppressing your thoughts or hiding your opinions. It's about choosing when and how to share them in a way that adds value to the conversation. Sometimes, this means holding back for a moment to let someone else speak, even if you have something to say. It's about being mindful of the flow of the meeting and understanding that the best ideas often emerge when everyone has a chance to contribute. When you speak less, you also become more attuned to the overall dynamics of the group. You start to pick up on the mood of the room, the body language of your colleagues, and the tone of the conversation. This awareness allows you to gauge when it's the right time to step in and when it's better to remain silent. Over time, this skill of reading the room becomes an invaluable tool, helping you navigate meetings with greater finesse. In many ways, speaking less in meetings is a sign of confidence. It shows that you don't feel the need to constantly assert yourself or dominate the conversation. You trust that your ideas are valuable and that when the time is right, they will be heard. This quiet confidence is incredibly powerful, and it positions you as someone who is not only competent, but also wise. It sends a message that you don't need to prove anything. Your words speak for themselves. As you embrace this practice of speaking less, you'll also begin to recognize how much energy it saves you. Instead of engaging in every conversation, you start to conserve your mental and emotional resources. You become more selective in how you spend your time and attention, allowing you to be more present in the moments that matter. This leads to a greater sense of clarity and focus, both in meetings and in life. Speaking less in meetings isn't about shutting yourself down or staying silent all the time. It's about speaking with purpose, precision, and impact. It's about understanding that the most powerful contributions often come in small, thoughtful doses. When you learn to say less, you'll find that your words carry more weight, your presence is more commanding, and your ability to influence those around you becomes stronger.